Hello and welcome to VOA Co-production, our special coverage on upcoming US election in collaboration with Voice of America. I'm Akanksha Swarup. Now, with about 2 months to go till the US presidential elections, two significant issues have polarized the US voters. Primarily, the issues of racial justice and the other of law enforcement. President Donald Trump and his supporters in the Republican Party tend to favor a more stringent law and order approach, while Democratic Party voters and Democratic candidate Joe Biden supports reform to law enforcement. And this past week, both President Trump and Biden visited Kenosha in the state of Wisconsin. The city has experienced violent unrest after the shooting of a black man during his attempted arrest by the police. We bring you a report.
Protests and counter-protests greeted President Donald Trump's visit to Kenosha, Wisconsin, following violent unrest over the police shooting of Jacob Blake on August 23rd. The black man was shot 7 times in the back by a white police officer trying to arrest him. Defying statements from the Kenosha mayor and Wisconsin governor, who say the president's visit will trigger more racial tension, Trump toured a business area burnt down during the unrest.
And we're going to help them a lot. I think we're going to help them a lot.
Trump met with law enforcement, but not the Blake family. He pushed a message of law and order to tamp down months of sometimes violent protests around the country, wading deeper into the debate over racial tension ahead of the November election. This week, Trump suggested that a white teenager accused of fatally shooting 2 people with a semi-automatic weapon during the Kenosha unrest may have acted in self-defense, prompting more criticism, including from Democratic presidential nominee Joe Biden.
Fires are burning and we have a president who fans the flames rather than fighting the flames. But we must not burn. We have to build.
Trump blamed Democrats for enabling the violence, which he called domestic terror.
Reckless far-left politicians continue to push the destructive message that our nation and our law enforcement are oppressive or racist.
The president's response to racial unrest is becoming a key election issue, with some research suggesting it may motivate black voters to come to the polls. But despite the Trump campaign's laser focus on law and order, ultimately it may not change many minds.
Support, particularly among whites, for the protest movement has declined somewhat. But in a highly polarized country, Trump's base of support is stable, Biden's base of support is stable, and we're just not seeing that much movement despite news events.
Still, the Trump campaign is making an appeal to white suburban voters concerned by the violence, particularly in swing states such as Wisconsin. Patsy Widakuswara, VOA News.
And so let's get in a sense of perspective with regards to the ongoing political scenario in the United States. For that, I'm joined in by Voice of America's Nova Purwadi, who joins me live from Washington, D.C. at this hour. A very good evening to you, Nova. I hope you're doing good. Now, this is quite a contrast between both camps. Is this where Republicans and Democrats diverge the most?
Well, Akansha, I wouldn't say it would be the most that they diverge or that this was the most polarizing issue, but it is one of the most polarizing issues. The Pew Research Center recently held a survey of potential voters, asking them what the issues were that they were the most concerned about. And this poll, while it showed some things which they where their concerns converged, the economy was ranked as the top concern among voters across the board. But for Trump supporters, it's the economy and also the fear of violent crime. That's that's 2 of their top priorities. Whereas for Democrats, it's the COVID pandemic and also healthcare. These are this shows that both sides view it very, very differently. And you could also see a difference in the approach of both candidates. You saw in our report President Trump going to Kenosha, Wisconsin, and only meeting with law enforcement and also business owners who had had their businesses burned down. Whereas Vice President Biden, the candidate from the Democratic Party, he met with black leaders. He also contacted Jacob Blake on the phone and also spoke with members of his family. So 2 different approaches in seeing this. Akansha.
Right, two different and two very contrasting approaches in the larger picture. Also, Nova, how likely are issues like law and order and racial justice likely to sway undecided voters in November?
Now, that's the interesting thing, is because the undecided voter is a term that's thrown around in every election. Are there really undecided voters with 2 months to go? But the polling shows that there are some voters who have not decided whether to back President Trump or Joe Biden, or even to vote at all. The numbers, though, keep dwindling as election date comes, which is going to be November 3rd this year. A poll by Ipsos and Reuters in mid-July put the around late July, put the numbers at around 13%. There's also, but earlier in the month, it was 1 in 5. Washington, Wall Street Journal, and also NBC put it at 13 as well around July. But a more recent poll by Ipsos puts it at 10%. Will they sway one way or another? As we reported in our earlier report, there doesn't seem to be much wiggle room. But this proved to be a decisive factor in 2016 when many broke for President Trump and or simply did not vote for Hillary Clinton. We also have to note that what is in voters' minds? Is it more personality or policy? Does policy trump everything, if you can pardon my term? So while many Republican voters or Republican-leaning voters may not like President Trump's personality, they might actually be won over by his policy. He's managed to have 2 Supreme Court justices confirmed, conservative justices, and this may be a big issue to a lot of voters. So we'll just see whether the law and order approach, which he also touted in his 2016 campaign, whether that resonates in the battleground states like Wisconsin that he just visited, and also Michigan and Pennsylvania, where Joe Biden was born, Akansha.
Right, that's a very interesting way of breaking it down for our viewer. Policy versus personality. That's actually an interesting analysis as far as Donald Trump is concerned. But we have a lot to talk about, and for now, let me also focus on the economy, which remains a crucial aspect for the American voter. And for that, I'm going to request you, Nova, to hang in there for our viewers as I return to you. For now, the economy remains a top issue during this election, along with previous elections, and many in the US are still suffering economically from the COVID-19 pandemic. College towns across America are eager to see students return to classes this month and help local businesses recover from the coronavirus pandemic. But as Mariama Diallo reports, local business owners are also worried there will be a surge in new cases. Here's more.
When the pandemic sent many of Michigan University's 40,000 plus students back home earlier this year, the college town's small business district felt it big time.
It was like a 3-foot blizzard without snow. So, nobody walking on the sidewalks, nobody going up and down the streets.
The fall term begins in September with at least some in-person classes on campus. That's bringing both hope and anxiety to businesses which rely on the students to stay afloat. Adam Lowenstein is a bar owner.
I'm glad to see the students coming back. Like the first probably emotion is relief, happiness.
Justin Herrick owns a restaurant.
My gut feel is people are going to come back. There's going to be a significant outbreak, and it's either going to be managed and contained, or they're going to hit the pause button and go all online. And I think my gut feel is probably the latter.
Jeff Saunders, the owner of a piercing parlor, says he's fought hard to keep his business going.
So the pandemic's really thrown a lot at us. And you have to really run your business extraordinarily well to succeed.
Not all places are back up and running. Espresso Royale Coffee, the once successful shop, is not coming back due to the pandemic, according to its website. Former customers like this Michigan U student are disappointed.
Yeah, it kind of sucks that those places are not opening up, especially Espresso Royale. There's a lot of people in my house that like that.
Perry Perico sits in the street outside one of his businesses in a makeshift patio area that didn't exist before the COVID-19 pandemic. Despite troubles, he remains optimistic.
I'm hoping and praying, and I believe that we're going to be okay. We're going to be okay.
Small business owners eager to see students and normalcy again. Mariama Diallo, VOA News.
And so clearly, economy remains a crucial issue for the US voter this year as well. To get in a sense of perspective, let's quickly go back to Nova Purbadi, who's joining me live from Washington, D.C. at this hour. Nova, as we were talking earlier about the whole aspect of the economy will be one issue discussed by both campaigns. What's coming ahead in the election calendar?
Well, the economy is bound to be a major factor discussed by both candidates, both in their campaigns and also in the upcoming debates. There are actually two debates coming up for the presidential candidates. The first coming in late September, later this month, and also there's one vice presidential debate coming up in October. Now this will be interesting because it's a match between Vice President Mike Pence and the nominee from the Democratic Party, Kamala Harris. She's been known to be very aggressive, and also even in the primary process, she also was very aggressive against who turned out to be the nominee, Joe Biden. Those are the two main agendas coming up before the polls open on November 3rd, Akansha.
Right, so those are the two main agendas, as you pointed out. Now, like in many countries, Nova, the economy is always a major election issue. How does this affect the chances of both the incumbent and his opponent?
Well, that's the thing. Usually when the economy is roaring, then, the incumbent is very favored to win re-election. This has been the case in previous elections with maybe one or two divergences. But what's happened is the coronavirus has turned everything upside down. And so the economy is now only in recovery phase, and the recovery phase, as much as President Trump and also the Trump administration wanted to be a so-called V-shaped recovery, it seems to be more W, because there was a major surge in employment, for instance, in around June after the lockdowns were eased, but then it was followed by a surge in coronavirus cases as well, which caused two new lockdowns and new restrictions. And that caused another spike in unemployment. Now, just over an hour ago, we got the newest employment data from the Department of Labor here. It showed that during August, there was a 1.4 million addition of new jobs. This was in line with expectations of analysts who predicted 1.2 or 1.3 million. But it falls short of the 4.5 plus that occurred in June. So we'll see.
A lot of data crunching is going to happen, and we'll have to wait and watch how much of that actually works in favor of Donald Trump. For now, thank you so much, Nova, for bringing us all those details and sharing your precious inputs with us here at VOA.
Thank you, Akansha.